AITA for not allowing my cousin to bring her kids to my wedding despite her insistence. I, 27F, am getting married to the love of my life, Adam, 28M, in a few months. I've been planning this wedding for a long time, and I've been very particular about every detail. It's going to be a small but beautiful ceremony with only close family and friends in attendance. We've kept the guest list to around 50 people, and I've worked hard to ensure that it's going to be an intimate and elegant celebration. One of the main points I've been clear about is that I don't want children at the wedding. I know that may sound harsh to some, but I've made this decision for a few reasons. First, I've always envisioned my wedding as a peaceful, grown-up event with an atmosphere that's relaxing and not chaotic. I also don't want to deal with the stress of worrying about kids running around, making noise, or needing constant attention during such an important event. I've worked hard to plan everything meticulously, and I want it to be an event where everyone can be fully present and enjoy themselves without any distractions. I'm also not super close with kids in general, and while I understand that many people love having children at events, it's just not what I want for my day. My fiancé and I have both agreed that we want a child-free wedding, and we've communicated this clearly in the invitations. We put adults only on the invitation, and we've made it a point to gently remind family members who have young children that they won't be able to bring them along. Most of our family members have been understanding about this, but there's been one issue that I didn't expect to come up. My cousin Sarah, 32F, who I'm close with, has two young children, Lily, for F, and Max, 6M. Sarah and I have always gotten along well, and I was excited to have her at my wedding. However, when I sent her the invitation, she reached out to me almost immediately to ask if she could bring her kids. At first, I thought it was a simple misunderstanding. I reminded her that we were keeping the wedding adult only and explained that we had made the decision to not have children at the event. She seemed a little disappointed, but said she understood, and I thought that was the end of it. But then, Sarah kept bringing it up. Every time we talked, she would ask if there was any way she could bring the kids. She'd tell me how much it meant to her for them to be there, especially since Lily and Max have been excited about the wedding. She even started saying things like, well, if they can't come, I might not be able to come either. That's when things started getting a little tense. I told her that I really appreciated her desire to have her kids attend, but that this was a very specific boundary I'd set for my wedding, and I didn't feel comfortable bending it. I made it clear that while I understood she wanted them to be there, it was my special day, and I wanted it to be the way I had envisioned it. She didn't take it well. Sarah started getting upset with me, accusing me of being selfish and not considering how important it was for her to have her children at the wedding. She said that it wasn't fair to make her choose between her kids and her family, and she couldn't imagine attending an event without them. She even implied that I didn't understand what it was like to have kids and how hard it was to get a babysitter or find someone to look after them. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her children specifically, but about my overall vision for the wedding. I said that if we allowed kids, it would open the door for other people to ask if they could bring their children, and it could turn into a situation where the wedding no longer felt the way I wanted it to. I told her that I had to stick with my decision because it was important to me, but I also reassured her that I understood if she couldn't attend because of it. She didn't seem to accept that, and now things have escalated. Sarah started saying things like, I'm hurt that you don't want my kids at your wedding, and I didn't realize you were so against children being a part of family events. She even posted something on social media that seemed like a passive-aggressive jab at me, saying, it's a shame that some people can't make room for kids in their lives, even for special occasions. The issue has become a point of tension within the family. Some relatives are siding with me, saying that I have every right to set boundaries for my wedding, and that it's not unreasonable to have an adults-only event. Others are taking Sarah's side, saying that family events should include everyone, and that I'm being too rigid about it. A few family members have even suggested that I should compromise and allow just her kids, which I've rejected because I feel it would be unfair to make an exception for one person and not others. I've been feeling really torn about this. I don't want to lose a close relationship with Sarah over this, but at the same time, this is my wedding, and I don't feel like I should have to compromise on something that's so important to me. I know that having children at the wedding might make some people happy, but it would make me feel uncomfortable and distracted, and I want to have a stress-free and relaxed day. I've tried to explain my position to Sarah as calmly as I can, but it seems like she's taking it personally and is refusing to understand. She's now even questioning whether she should attend at all, and I'm starting to feel like I'm being pressured to change my decision, which is making me uncomfortable. So, AITA for not allowing my cousin to bring her kids to my wedding despite her insistence? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée wear a family heirloom wedding dress at her wedding? This situation has escalated into something I never expected, and now my entire family is split down the middle. I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong. So here it goes. I, 33F, come from a family with a very strong tradition surrounding weddings. My great-grandmother hand-sewed a beautiful wedding dress in the 1920s, and it's been passed down through the generations. It's an exquisite piece, lace detailing, intricate embroidery, and timeless design. The tradition has always been that the first daughter in each generation has the honor of wearing it for a wedding. My grandmother wore it, my mother wore it, and I've always dreamed of wearing it for mine. The dress has been preserved and cared for meticulously. My mom had it restored before her wedding to keep it in pristine condition. She's told me the story of the dress since I was a little girl, and it's always been a significant part of how I envision my future wedding. I'm currently engaged to my fiancée, 34M, and while we haven't set a date yet, I know for sure that I want to wear the dress when the time comes. Enter my younger brother, Mark, 30M, and his fiancée, Lily, 28F. Mark and Lily have been together for about 3 years, and they got engaged last year. Their wedding is set for this summer, and Lily has been in full planning mode for months. I like Lily well enough. We're not super close, but we've always gotten along fine, and I was genuinely happy for her when they announced their engagement. A few weeks ago, Lily approached me with what she called an exciting idea. She said she's always admired vintage wedding dresses and thinks the dress in our family is stunning. Then she asked if she could wear it for her wedding. I was completely caught off guard. I didn't know how to respond at first because, in my mind, the dress was never something up for grabs. It's a family tradition for the first daughter, and I've been looking forward to wearing it for years. I tried to be polite and explained that the dress was something I've always planned to wear for my wedding, and I didn't feel comfortable with someone else using it before me. I suggested that if she loved vintage dresses, there are so many beautiful options she could find that would be just as meaningful to her. Lily didn't take this well. She told me she thought it was selfish to keep the dress just sitting there when it could be used for her wedding. She argued that since I don't even have a wedding date set yet, it shouldn't matter if she wears it first. She said it would still be there for me whenever I decided to get married and that it's just a dress anyway. She even tried to guilt-trip me by saying that it would mean so much to her to wear something with family history, especially since her own family doesn't have any heirlooms like that. I stood my ground and told her no. I reiterated that the dress is a deeply personal thing for me, and I'm not willing to lend it out. I said I didn't want to risk anything happening to it, and I wanted it to be in the best condition possible for my own wedding. I thought that would be the end of it, but boy, was I wrong. Lily went to Mark and told him about our conversation. He called me and said I was being unreasonable and unfair. He said that Lily should be allowed to wear the dress because she's going to be part of the family, and that I'm being possessive over something that should belong to all of us. He even brought up that since I don't have a wedding date, there's no guarantee I'll even get married. So why not let someone who's actually getting married use it? That comment stung. Now my parents are involved, and they're divided. My mom is on my side. She says the dress was always meant for me, and that Lily has no right to demand it. She's furious that Mark and Lily are trying to pressure me into giving it up. My dad, on the other hand, thinks I'm making too big a deal out of this and that it's just a dress. He says families should share things and that I'm being territorial and creating unnecessary drama. Lily hasn't let this go either. She's brought it up repeatedly in family group chats, trying to frame it as me being difficult and unwilling to compromise. She's even hinted that if I don't let her wear the dress, she might rethink inviting me to the wedding. This has put me in a really awkward position because now extended family members are chiming in with their opinions. Some are saying I'm being selfish, while others think Lily is overstepping. I've tried to explain my feelings, but Lily keeps saying that I'm prioritizing a what-if scenario over her actual wedding, and that it's not fair. Mark keeps backing her up and accusing me of being jealous or bitter, which couldn't be further from the truth. I'm happy for them, but I feel like this is a boundary I have every right to set. Now I'm questioning myself. Am I really being selfish for wanting to keep the dress for my own wedding? Should I just let Lily wear it and try to move past this? Or am I right to stand my ground? AITA? AITA for firing my brother from my company after he caused a major deal to fall through? I, 35M, own a small but successful tech company that I started about 10 years ago. It wasn't easy in the beginning. I poured my savings, blood, sweat, and tears into this business to get it off the ground. It took years of hard work, sleepless nights, and a lot of risks to get to where we are now. We've grown steadily, and while we're not a massive corporation, we've developed a strong reputation in our industry and have a solid team of 30 employees. My younger brother, Jake, 30M, has been working for me for the past 3 years. Jake and I have always had a decent relationship, but growing up, he was known to be a bit irresponsible and flaky. He's extremely charming and creative, but he's never been the most reliable person. Before joining my company, he bounced around between jobs, struggling to find something that stuck. When he approached me a few years ago, saying he wanted to join the company and learn the ropes, I was hesitant but ultimately decided to give him a chance. I started Jake in an entry-level role, and over time he moved up to a more significant position in the business development team. He showed potential, and I wanted to support him, so I gave him more responsibilities. I figured that if I mentored him, he could grow into the role and become a valuable asset to the company. Things were fine for a while, but over the past year, Jake's performance has been slipping. He's missed deadlines, dropped the ball on important tasks, and even rubbed some of our clients the wrong way with his overly casual demeanor. I had multiple conversations with him about stepping up and taking his responsibilities seriously, but he always brushed it off, saying he had it under control. Fast forward to a few months ago, when my company had the opportunity to secure a huge deal with a major client. This deal would have been transformative for us, significantly boosting our revenue and opening the door to even bigger opportunities. Jake was part of the team handling the negotiations, and I made it clear how important this deal was. I also assigned another senior team member, Lisa, to oversee the process, but Jake was supposed to take the lead on several key aspects. About a week before the final meeting with the client, Jake asked if he could take a few days off for a last-minute vacation with his girlfriend. I was shocked he'd even ask, given the timing, and I told him no, that this was a critical period for the company, and we needed him to focus. He seemed annoyed but said he understood. However, 2 days later, I found out he had gone on the trip anyway, leaving Lisa and the rest of the team scrambling to pick up the slack. When Jake returned, I confronted him, and he acted like it wasn't a big deal. He said Lisa had it covered and accused me of overreacting. I was furious but decided to focus on salvaging the deal instead of escalating the situation further. Unfortunately, during the final meeting with the client, it became clear that some key information Jake was supposed to provide had been mishandled. The client was unimpressed with our team's coordination and ultimately decided to back out of the deal. The loss of this deal was a huge blow, not just financially, but also to our reputation. I was devastated, and so was the rest of the team. After taking some time to assess the situation, I called Jake into my office and told him that I could no longer have him on the team. I explained that his repeated irresponsibility and lack of commitment had not only hurt the company, but also damaged my trust in him. I gave him a severance package and told him I hoped he'd use this experience as a wake-up call to take his career more seriously. Jake didn't take it well. He accused me of being a terrible brother, said I was prioritizing money over family, and claimed I was making him a scapegoat for the deal falling through. He stormed out and hasn't spoken to me since. My parents have also gotten involved, and they're furious with me for firing him. They think I should have given him another chance because family sticks together, and they've accused me of valuing my business more than my relationship with my brother. I've tried to explain to them that this wasn't an easy decision and that I've given Jake multiple chances to improve. I even pointed out that if he weren't my brother, I would have fired him months ago for his repeated mistakes. But they don't seem to understand the impact his actions had on the company and the people who work for me. They keep saying that I've destroyed the family dynamic and that Jake is now struggling to find another job because of me. Some of my friends and colleagues have supported my decision, saying that I did what I had to do to protect my business. Others, however, have suggested that I should have handled it differently maybe by demoting Jake or giving him a less critical role instead of outright firing him. I've been second-guessing myself ever since, wondering if I made the right call or if I let my frustration cloud my judgment. So, AITA for firing my brother from my company after he caused a major deal to fall through? AITA for refusing to house my sister and her kids after her messy divorce. Even though I have the space, I never thought I'd end up in this position. But here I am, torn between family expectations and my own peace of mind. I'm writing this because my entire family is divided, and I genuinely don't know if I'm in the wrong here. I, 38F, have spent most of my adult life building a stable, quiet life for myself. I'm single, have no kids, and live in a large 5-bedroom house that I bought a few years ago. I worked my way up in my career, saved diligently, and bought this house as a personal sanctuary. I use one room as my bedroom, one as a home office, another as a guest room, and the remaining 2 rooms are hobby spaces, one for my painting and the other for yoga and meditation. My house is my safe space, and I love the calm and solitude it provides. My younger sister Maggie, 34F, has had a more tumultuous life. She married young and has 3 kids, 10F, 8M, and 5M. Her husband Dave, 36M, cheated on her, and their marriage recently ended in a very messy divorce. Maggie is understandably devastated, and she's struggling to get back on her feet. She was a stay-at-home mom for most of her marriage, so she doesn't have a steady income. She's currently staying with our parents, but their house is small, and she says it's cramped and stressful for her and the kids. She asked me if she and the kids could move in with me temporarily while she sorts things out. At first, I didn't know how to respond. I love Maggie and my nieces and nephew, but the idea of having 4 people move into my home felt overwhelming. I've never lived with kids, and I know how chaotic things can get with young children. I explained to Maggie that I wasn't sure if I could handle such a big lifestyle change, especially since I've always valued my peace and independence. Maggie assured me it would only be for a few months, maybe 6 at most, while she looks for a job and saves up for a place of her own. She promised the kids would behave and that she'd do her best to keep things as stress-free as possible. But even with her assurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that this arrangement would turn my life upside down. I told Maggie I needed time to think about it. During that time, I tried to imagine what it would be like to have 3 kids running around, disrupting my routines, and invading the quiet I've worked so hard to create. I also thought about the financial aspect. While Maggie didn't outright ask, I had a feeling I'd end up covering a lot of their expenses since she has no income right now. It felt like too much to take on, especially when I've built my life in a way that prioritizes my own well-being. When I finally gave Maggie my answer, I told her that I couldn't let them move in. I offered to help in other ways, like babysitting occasionally, helping her search for jobs, or even contributing some money toward her rent for a small apartment. But I was firm that I couldn't have them living with me. Maggie was crushed. She started crying and accused me of being selfish and heartless. She said she couldn't believe I would leave her and her kids in such a difficult situation when I have so much space in my house. My parents have also been pressuring me to change my mind. They say that families should help each other in times of need, and that I'm being unfair by refusing. My mom even pointed out that I don't need all the space in my house, and that I could easily convert my hobby rooms into bedrooms for the kids. They've made me feel like a villain for prioritizing my own comfort over my sister's hardship. On the other hand, some of my friends and colleagues have told me I'm not in the wrong. They argue that I've worked hard for my home and my peace, and it's not my responsibility to upend my life for someone else, even if they're family. They also pointed out that Maggie has other options, like government assistance, finding a roommate, or even staying with our parents a bit longer until she can afford her own place. Still, the guilt is eating away at me. Maggie has sent me several messages since our conversation, ranging from pleading to angry. She says I don't understand how hard it is for her and that I'm putting my selfishness above her kids' well-being. She even told me that my refusal has made her question whether I really care about her and the kids at all. To make matters worse, my parents have started telling other family members about the situation, and now I'm getting messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all weighing in. Some think I'm doing the right thing by setting boundaries, while others think I'm being cruel and abandoning my family when they need me most. The mixed opinions have only made me feel more confused and conflicted. I hate the idea of my sister struggling, and I feel for her kids, who are innocent in all of this. But at the same time, I can't ignore my own needs and the life I've worked so hard to create. I'm scared that if I let them move in, it'll become a long-term situation, and I'll lose the peace and stability I've fought so hard to achieve. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in with me, even though I have the space? Or am I justified in setting this boundary, even if it means disappointing my family? AITA for refusing to let my father move into my home after he abandoned me and my siblings years ago. This is a long story, and I need to get everything out because my emotions are all over the place. My family is split, and I'm being told I'm heartless, but I feel like I have my reasons. I'll try to keep this as structured as possible. I, 29F, grew up in a family of 4 kids. I'm the eldest, and my siblings are Jake, 27M, Sarah, 24F, and Ethan, 22M. Our mom, who we all adore, was a stay-at-home parent for most of our childhoods. Our dad, on the other hand, was complicated. He was the breadwinner, but he was emotionally distant, often absent, and sometimes outright cruel. He would belittle us, especially me, since I was the eldest and, in his words, the one who needed to set an example. When I was 13, my dad left us. One day, he came home, announced he was leaving, and packed his things. Just like that. No warning, no explanation. He said he wasn't happy anymore and that we were holding him back. He moved out, cut contact, and left my mom to figure everything out on her own. We later found out he had been having an affair with a younger woman, and they moved in together almost immediately after he left. He didn't even try to keep in touch with us. No calls, no birthdays, no holidays. It was like we didn't exist anymore. My mom did her best to hold things together, but it was hard. We were broke for a long time. She took on multiple jobs to make ends meet, and I had to step up to help with my siblings. I basically became a second parent at a young age, cooking, cleaning, helping with homework, and making sure Jake, Sarah, and Ethan were okay. It was a tough time, but we all leaned on each other and got through it. Fast forward to now. My dad's life didn't go as planned. The woman he left us for ended up leaving him a few years ago, and he's been struggling ever since. He never remarried, and his health has been declining. He's had some financial troubles too, mostly due to poor decisions and bad investments. Recently, I got a call from him out of the blue. It was the first time I'd heard his voice in over 15 years. He told me he was struggling and needed help. He said he couldn't afford his rent anymore and was being evicted. He asked if he could move in with me temporarily until he got back on his feet. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. This man, who abandoned me and my siblings, who left my mom to struggle, who never once tried to make amends, was now asking me for help. I told him I needed time to think about it. I didn't want to make a snap decision, but in my gut, I already knew what my answer was. I talked to my siblings about it, and they were all on my side. Jake was especially furious, saying that our dad didn't deserve a single ounce of help from us. Sarah and Ethan felt the same way. We all agreed that while we weren't going to be cruel or vindictive, we also didn't feel like we owed him anything. When I called my dad back, I told him no. I said I wasn't comfortable having him in my home and that I didn't think it was my responsibility to take care of him after everything he'd done, or more accurately, failed to do for us. I suggested he look into other options, like applying for government assistance or reaching out to friends. He didn't take it well. He started crying, saying he had nowhere else to go and that I was punishing him for mistakes he made years ago. He accused me of being cold-hearted and said he thought family was supposed to take care of each other. Since then, my dad has been calling me non-stop, leaving voicemails and sending texts trying to guilt me into changing my mind. He's told me he regrets what he did and that he wants to reconnect with us, but it all feels so hollow. He's had over a decade to try and reconnect, to apologize, to be part of our lives again. Why now, when he needs something from me, does he suddenly want to fix things? To make matters worse, some extended family members have gotten involved. My dad apparently told his side of the story to a few relatives, painting me as this ungrateful, vindictive daughter who's holding a grudge and refusing to help her own father. I've had aunts and uncles calling me, saying I should be the bigger person and that it's my duty as his child to help him. One aunt even went so far as to say, "He's still your father, no matter what he's done." I feel like I'm being gaslit. Yes, he's my biological father, but what does that really mean when he hasn't been a father to me in any meaningful way since I was a kid? I've spent most of my life without him, and I've built a life I'm proud of without his support. I have a good job, a lovely home, and a sense of peace that I worked hard to achieve. The idea of letting him into my life, let alone my home, feels like opening a door to chaos and resentment. I also think about my mom and everything she went through because of him. She sacrificed so much to make sure we had what we needed, and she's the reason we're all okay today. I can't imagine how she'd feel if I let him move in, knowing how much he hurt her. At the same time, the guilt is eating at me. I wonder if I'm being too harsh, if maybe this is an opportunity to rise above the past and show compassion. But then I think about how little compassion he showed us when we needed him most, and I feel justified in my decision. It's a constant back and forth in my head. So, AITA, for refusing to let my father move into my home after he abandoned me and my siblings all those years ago? Or should I let go of the past and help him, even if it means compromising my own boundaries and peace of mind? AITA, for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she demanded I change everything about myself for her perfect day. This is a bit long, but I feel like the context is important. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 29F. Growing up, we were complete opposites. I was the artsy, unconventional one who loved painting, theater, and anything creative. Emma was the golden child, straight-A student, head cheerleader, and later a lawyer. My parents always favored her, which created a lot of resentment over the years. Despite this, I've always tried to maintain a cordial relationship with her, even though it often feels like I'm the one making all the effort. Emma's always had this need for everything in her life to be perfect. She's very particular about appearances and likes everything to be polished and Instagram-worthy. This tendency has caused friction between us, because I don't fit into her picture-perfect world. I have brightly colored hair. Right now it's purple, tattoos, and a quirky sense of style that doesn't conform to traditional standards. Emma got engaged about a year ago to her fiancé, Ryan, 31M, who's honestly a nice guy. The wedding planning started almost immediately, and true to Emma's nature, it became an extravagant production. She hired a wedding planner, sent out lengthy questionnaires to the bridal party, and even created a mood board for what she wanted everyone to look like on the day. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, and while I was hesitant, I agreed because I wanted to support her. Things started going downhill when Emma sent me a detailed expectations list for her bridesmaids. This included things like hair and makeup guidelines, dress codes, and even a requirement to attend a weekend-long bridesmaid boot camp to learn the choreography for a flash mob she had planned for the reception. I thought it was over the top, but I tried to go along with it because I didn't want to cause drama. The real issue arose when Emma sat me down to have a serious conversation about my appearance. She started by saying that she appreciated me agreeing to be a bridesmaid, but that my look didn't fit her wedding aesthetic. She told me she needed me to dye my hair back to a natural color, cover up my tattoos with makeup, and wear contact lenses instead of my glasses. She even suggested I tone down my personality during the wedding weekend, so I wouldn't distract from the event. She said it was her special day and that she wanted everything to look cohesive in the photos and videos. I was stunned. I told her I understood that it was her wedding and that she had a vision, but asking me to change everything about myself felt excessive. I pointed out that she knew who I was when she asked me to be a bridesmaid, and if my appearance was such a problem, she shouldn't have included me in the bridal party. Emma got defensive and said that weddings are about compromise and that everyone was making sacrifices for her big day. She compared my refusal to dye my hair to one of her other bridesmaids, who had agreed to lose weight to fit into her dress. I was horrified that she even thought that was a fair comparison. Things escalated from there. I told Emma that while I was willing to follow the dress code and participate in the events, I wasn't going to change my hair, cover my tattoos, or pretend to be someone I'm not. She called me selfish and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding out of spite. She said I was making it all about me and that if I really cared about her, I would do this one thing to make her day perfect. I ended up leaving the conversation feeling both angry and hurt. I talked to my parents about it, hoping they'd understand, but they sided with Emma. My mom said that weddings are a once-in-a-lifetime event and that I should be willing to compromise to make my sister happy. My dad said it was just hair and that I was overreacting. The rest of my family has chimed in, with most of them agreeing that I should suck it up and do what Emma wants. At this point, I was so fed up that I called Emma and told her I couldn't be a bridesmaid anymore. I said I loved her and wished her the best, but that I wasn't willing to change who I am to fit into her vision. Emma completely lost it. She said I was trying to sabotage her wedding and that if I didn't want to support her, I shouldn't bother coming at all. I told her I'd respect her wishes and wouldn't attend, which only made her angrier. She hung up on me, and we haven't spoken since. Now my whole family is coming down on me. They're saying I've ruined the family dynamic and that Emma is devastated. My mom told me Emma cried for hours after our call and that she's now scrambling to find a replacement bridesmaid. My dad said I was being petty and that family should come first, no matter what. Even some of my friends have suggested I could have just gone along with it to keep the peace. But I can't help feeling like this isn't just about the wedding. This is about years of Emma and my family expecting me to conform to their idea of who I should be, and I'm finally standing up for myself. I don't want to compromise my identity just to fit into Emma's curated world, but now I'm questioning whether I've taken it too far. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she demanded I change everything about myself for her perfect day? Or should I have just gone along with it to avoid all this drama? AITA for telling my brother he's not welcome at my wedding unless he apologizes for what he did at my engagement party. I, 31F, recently got engaged to my fiancé, Ben, 34M. We've been together for 4 years, and I couldn't be happier to start this new chapter with him. We decided to host an engagement party a couple of months ago to celebrate with close friends and family. For the most part, it was a wonderful evening, but something happened that night that has created a massive rift in my family. For context, my brother Mark, 28M, has always been the type of person who loves being the center of attention. Growing up, he was the funny one in the family, always cracking jokes and pulling pranks. While some of his antics were harmless, others crossed the line, but our parents rarely disciplined him because that's just Mark. I can't even count how many family gatherings he's disrupted over the years with his need to be the focus of everything. Back to the engagement party. Ben and I spent weeks planning this event. We rented a beautiful venue, hired a caterer, and even put together a small slideshow of photos from our relationship to share with our guests. It was important to us that the night felt special, as it marked the beginning of our journey to marriage. Mark showed up to the party with his girlfriend, Lisa, who I've only met a handful of times. She seems nice enough, but they both have this way of feeding off each other's chaotic energy. I didn't think much of it at first, but as the night went on, I noticed Mark acting more and more attention-seeking. He was telling loud, inappropriate jokes, interrupting conversations, and generally behaving like he was at a frat party instead of an engagement celebration. The tipping point came during the slideshow. Ben and I had put together a series of photos and short video clips from our travels, special occasions, and moments we'd shared over the years. It was meant to be a sweet, sentimental part of the evening. As the slideshow played, I noticed Mark snickering and nudging Lisa. At first, I tried to ignore it, but then I saw him pull out his phone and start filming the slideshow while making sarcastic commentary under his breath. When the slideshow ended, Mark suddenly stood up, clinked his glass, and announced he had a little something to add. I had no idea what he was planning, but before I could say anything, he connected his phone to the venue screen. Apparently, he had made his own slideshow of funny pictures of me from our childhood, teenage years, and early adulthood. Some of the photos were harmless, but others were deeply embarrassing, like one of me covered in acne during high school, another from college when I got a terrible haircut, and one from a Halloween party where I'd had way too much to drink. Everyone in the room was laughing, including Ben, though he looked uncomfortable. Meanwhile, I felt humiliated. It wasn't just the pictures. It was the fact that Mark had hijacked a moment that was supposed to be about celebrating my relationship and turned it into a spectacle for his own amusement. I tried to laugh it off, but when he ended the slideshow with a sarcastic caption that said, "From awkward to almost acceptable, Ben, you're a brave man," I couldn't take it anymore. I walked out of the room, holding back tears. Ben followed me and tried to comfort me, but the damage was done. The rest of the night felt awkward and strained. Mark came up to me at one point laughing and said, "Come on, it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." Lisa chimed in, saying, "You'll laugh about it later." I told them both that it wasn't funny and that they had ruined what was supposed to be a special moment for me and Ben. Mark rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering something about me being a drama queen. After the party, I decided to give myself some space before addressing the issue with Mark. A few days later, I called him and explained how hurt I was by his actions. I told him I didn't find it funny and that it felt like he had deliberately undermined an important moment in my life. Mark was defensive from the start. He said I was overreacting and that everyone else thought it was hilarious. He refused to apologize and accused me of being uptight. Fast forward to now. Ben and I are deep in wedding planning, and I've made it clear to my family that Mark will not be welcome at the wedding unless he apologizes for what he did at the engagement party. My parents are furious with me, saying I'm being petty and that it's not fair to exclude my brother over a harmless joke. They've been pressuring me to be the bigger person and let it go for the sake of family harmony. Even Ben has suggested that I reconsider, not because he thinks Mark was in the right, but because he doesn't want our wedding to be overshadowed by drama. He keeps saying, "It's your day and I don't want anything to ruin it," but is banning Mark really worth all this stress? Meanwhile, Mark has doubled down. He's told extended family members that I'm overreacting and that I'm trying to cancel him. He's painted me as this uptight, humorless bride-to-be who can't take a joke. Some relatives have even taken his side, saying I'm making too much of a big deal out of it. I'm torn. On one hand, I feel strongly that Mark needs to be held accountable for his behavior. Letting him come to the wedding without apologizing feels like rewarding his bad behavior and sending the message that he can disrespect me without consequences. On the other hand, the stress of this whole situation is starting to wear me down, and part of me wonders if it's worth the fight. So, AITA for refusing to invite my brother to my wedding unless he apologizes for what he did at my engagement party? Or should I just let it go for the sake of keeping the peace? AITA for refusing to let my estranged mother meet her grandchildren after she showed up unannounced at my house? This is a long one, but I need to explain everything to give the full picture. I, 34F, am married to my husband, James, 36M, and we have 2 children, Emma, 7F, and Noah, 4M. Our little family means the world to me, and we've worked hard to create a happy, stable home for our kids. However, there's a lot of history with my mother, Karen, 56F, that complicates things. To put it bluntly, my mom was not a good parent. My dad left when I was 3, and she raised me on her own, but raising is a generous way to describe it. She was neglectful, emotionally abusive, and entirely self-centered. Her priorities were always her own happiness, her boyfriends, and her social life. I was left to fend for myself from a young age. She'd leave me alone for hours, sometimes overnight, while she went out partying. When she was home, she was volatile, snapping at me for the smallest things or ignoring me altogether. I grew up walking on eggshells, never knowing if I'd be met with anger or indifference. Birthdays, holidays, school events, none of it mattered to her. When I turned 16, I got my first job and started saving up so I could leave as soon as I turned 18. The day I graduated high school, I moved out and never looked back. Over the years, my contact with her dwindled to almost nothing. Occasionally, she'd reach out, usually when she needed something, money, a favor, or someone to vent to. I kept her at arm's length, and eventually I stopped responding entirely. Fast forward to now. I hadn't seen or spoken to my mother in almost 8 years. She wasn't invited to my wedding, and she didn't reach out when my kids were born. To be honest, I didn't even know if she was still alive until a couple of weeks ago when she showed up unannounced at my front door. It was a Saturday afternoon, and James was out running errands while I was home with the kids. There was a knock at the door, and when I opened it, there she was. She looked older and frilier than I remembered, but it was definitely her. I was so stunned I didn't know what to say. She immediately launched into this emotional speech about how much she missed me, how she regretted everything, and how she wanted to make amends. Before I could process what was happening, Emma and Noah came running to see who was at the door. My mom's face lit up when she saw them, and she immediately tried to introduce herself as Grandma. That's when I snapped out of my shock and told the kids to go back inside. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and told her she couldn't just show up like this. She looked hurt, but said she wanted to rebuild our relationship and meet her grandchildren. She claimed she'd changed, that she was in therapy, and that she wanted to be part of my life again. I told her it wasn't that simple and that she couldn't expect to walk back into my life after everything she put me through. She started crying, saying she was sorry and that she just wanted a chance. I told her I needed time to think and asked her to leave. She kept pleading, but eventually she left. After she was gone, I sat down and explained to James what had happened. He was supportive of whatever decision I wanted to make, but he did ask if I was sure about completely shutting her out. He said that if she had truly changed, maybe it was worth considering giving her a chance, even if just for the kids to have a relationship with their grandmother. But here's the thing, I don't trust her. I don't believe people like my mom can change that drastically. Even if she has, I don't think I owe her anything. She wasn't there for me when I needed her, and I worked hard to build a life without her. Letting her back in feels like opening a door to all the pain and chaos I've spent years trying to leave behind. My siblings. I have two younger half-brothers, 30M and 28M, from different fathers, are divided on the issue. One of them is on my side, saying she doesn't deserve a second chance after everything she did. The other thinks I'm being too harsh and that people can change. He's been in contact with her on and off over the years, and he believes she's genuinely trying to make amends. Since that day, my mom has been texting and calling me nonstop. She sent long messages about how sorry she is, how much she's changed, and how she just wants to know her grandchildren. She's even contacted some of my extended family members to try to convince me to talk to her. A few of them have reached out, saying I should forgive her and let her be part of my life again. Others have told me they understand why I'm hesitant. I feel like I'm being pulled in a million directions. Part of me feels guilty for slamming the door on her when she seemed so genuine, but another part of me remembers the years of neglect, the yelling, the empty promises, and the way she always prioritized herself over me. I don't want to expose my kids to that, and I don't want to risk her hurting them the way she hurt me. At the same time, I can't shake the thought that maybe this is my chance to finally get closure. Maybe she really has changed. Maybe letting her meet the kids could be the start of something positive. Or maybe it's just opening a wound that should have stayed closed. So, AITA for refusing to let my estranged mother meet her grandchildren after she showed up unannounced at my house? Or am I being too harsh and holding on to the past when I should be giving her a chance to prove she's changed? AITA for refusing to name my baby after my late brother and causing a family meltdown? I, 33F, am currently pregnant with my first child, a little boy, due in about 2 months. My husband, Alex, 35M, and I are beyond excited to become parents. We've been together for 10 years and have always dreamed of starting a family. The pregnancy has been smooth so far, and we've spent months preparing for our son's arrival, decorating the nursery, reading every parenting book we can find, and yes, deciding on a name. Here's where the drama begins. My family is very close-knit, but there's a lot of history that complicates things. My older brother, Ethan, passed away in a car accident when he was 21 and I was 16. It was devastating for my family. Ethan was the golden child, charismatic, funny, and kind. He was my parents' pride and joy, and losing him shattered them. Understandably, his death left a huge void in our family, and it shaped a lot of what came after. For years, my parents clung to Ethan's memory. They created a kind of shrine in their house, photos of him everywhere, his room left untouched, and a yearly memorial on the anniversary of his death. I don't blame them for grieving, but as the other child, it often felt like I was invisible. I could never live up to Ethan's legacy, no matter how hard I tried. Every achievement of mine, was compared to what Ethan might have done if he'd lived. Even now, as an adult, family gatherings often revolve around reminiscing about Ethan, with little attention given to anyone else. When I announced my pregnancy, my parents were thrilled. They've been pressuring Alex and me to name our son Ethan to honor his uncle. At first, I tried to brush it off with vague responses like, "We're still deciding on names," or "We'll let you know when he's born." But they've become increasingly insistent. My mom has started referring to the baby as Little Ethan, and my dad has made comments about how happy it would make them to have Ethan's name live on. The thing is, Alex and I already picked out a name for our son, Miles. We both love it, and it feels perfect for him. When we told my parents, they were visibly upset. My mom immediately said, "But what about Ethan?" I gently explained that while we love and miss Ethan, this is our child, and we want to choose a name that feels right for us. I also pointed out that naming our son after Ethan would come with a lot of emotional baggage, and we want him to have his own identity, not to feel like he's living in his uncle's shadow. My parents did not take this well. My mom started crying, saying I was dishonoring Ethan's memory and that this was the perfect opportunity to keep him alive in some way. My dad said I was being selfish and accused me of trying to erase Ethan from the family. They even brought up how my cousins named their son after their late grandmother, as if that meant I was obligated to do the same. They kept saying things like, "Ethan would have been the best uncle," and "he deserves this." I tried to stay calm, but told them that our decision was final. I said I understood their feelings, but this was about Alex and me, not them. My mom stormed out of the room, and my dad said, "You'll regret this decision one day." Since then, they've been cold and distant. They barely talk to me, and when they do, it's always about Ethan. They've even started trying to recruit other family members to their side. My aunt called me last week to say she understands my parents' perspective and that it wouldn't hurt to compromise by making Ethan the baby's middle name. But even that doesn't feel right to me. While I love my brother and miss him dearly, I don't want to tie my son's identity to someone he'll never meet. I also don't want to set a precedent where my parents feel entitled to make decisions about how Alex and I raise our child. This is our family, and we should get to decide what's best for us. The situation came to a head last weekend at my baby shower. My parents showed up with a giant framed photo of Ethan to display at the party, so he could be part of the celebration. I was furious, but didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone, so I quietly asked them to put it away. They refused, saying it was their right as grandparents. Eventually, Alex had to step in and insist, which led to another blow-up. My mom started crying again, accusing me of being heartless and disrespectful. The party ended on an awkward note, with half the guests unsure of what had just happened. Now I'm second-guessing everything. Alex is 100% on my side and keeps reminding me that this is our decision to make, not theirs. But the guilt is eating at me. I know how much my parents have suffered, and I don't want to add to their pain. At the same time, I feel like they're trying to use my son as a way to heal their own wounds, which isn't fair to him or to us. So, AITA for refusing to name my son after my late brother, despite how much it means to my parents. Or should I just suck it up and give them this one thing to keep the peace? AITA for cutting my sister out of my wedding after she demanded I change the date for her. I, 28F, am getting married in 3 months to my fiancé, Ryan, 31M. We've been together for 6 years, engaged for almost 2, and have spent a lot of time planning what we hope will be a beautiful, meaningful celebration. We set our wedding date over a year ago, booked the venue, vendors, and sent out save-the-dates 9 months in advance so everyone would have plenty of time to plan. For context, I have an older sister, Laura, 33F. Growing up, we were close, but as we got older, our relationship became more complicated. Laura has always been a bit of a control freak and tends to make everything about her. She has this knack for turning even the smallest situations into high drama, and my family has always tiptoed around her to keep the peace. Despite our differences, I love her and was excited to have her be part of my wedding. I asked her to be my maid of honor, and at first she seemed thrilled. Everything was fine until about 2 months ago when Laura dropped a bombshell. She announced that she and her boyfriend, Dan, 35M, were engaged. I was genuinely happy for her and congratulated them both, but things got awkward fast. Laura then revealed that they were planning to get married this year. When I asked if they'd set a date, she said they hadn't decided yet, but were thinking about late summer or early fall. I didn't think much of it at the time, but a week later, Laura called me and said she and Dan had picked their wedding date, the exact same day as mine. I was completely shocked. I asked why she would choose that day when she knew it was my wedding day, and she acted like it was no big deal. She said it was the only date their dream venue had available this year, and that they didn't want to wait until next year to get married. I tried to stay calm and asked if they could reconsider, but Laura got defensive and accused me of being unsupportive. She said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have her wedding at this venue, and that I was being selfish for expecting her to wait. When I pointed out that I had already sent out save-the-dates and paid deposits for vendors, she shrugged and said, "Well, that's not my problem." At this point, I was furious, but I tried to be the bigger person. I told her that I wasn't going to change my wedding date and that I hoped she would reconsider hers, so our family wouldn't have to choose between two weddings on the same day. She basically told me that if I wanted to keep my date, that was my choice, but she wasn't changing hers either. The situation has only gotten worse since then. My parents, who have always catered to Laura's every whim, are now pressuring me to move my wedding date to avoid conflict. They've argued that Laura's venue is more special and that it would mean a lot to her to have her wedding there. When I pointed out how unfair it was to ask me to uproot my entire wedding for her, my mom said, "It's just a date, and you can always reschedule." Laura can't. I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality. Why should I have to change my plans when I was engaged and booked everything first? Ryan is furious and thinks I need to put my foot down, which I have, but the backlash has been overwhelming. My parents keep calling me selfish, and Laura has been telling anyone who will listen that I'm trying to ruin her wedding. She's even gone as far as to suggest that I chose my date to spite her, which makes no sense since I set the date months before she was even engaged. The final straw came last week when Laura told me that if I wouldn't move my wedding, she wouldn't be attending it. She said she couldn't, in good conscience, support someone who was being so vindictive and unsupportive of her happiness. I told her that was her decision, but if she chose not to come, she couldn't expect to be part of my wedding at all. That means no maid of honor role, no involvement in the planning, nothing. Now my family is in full meltdown mode. My parents are saying I'm tearing the family apart by cutting Laura out of the wedding, and even some extended family members are taking her side. They've called me petty, immature, and jealous. A few have suggested that I should just be the bigger person and reschedule, but I feel like that's rewarding Laura's selfish behavior. Ryan and my friends have been incredibly supportive, but I can't help but feel guilty about how this is affecting my family. I hate that my wedding, which should be a happy occasion, has turned into such a mess. At the same time, I don't think I'm in the wrong for standing my ground. I've tried to compromise. I've tried to reason with Laura, but nothing has worked. So, AITA for refusing to change my wedding date and cutting my sister out of the wedding after she demanded I accommodate her? Or am I being unreasonable and letting this feud ruin what should be one of the happiest times of my life? AITA for refusing to let my best friend be my maid of honor because she got mad about my wedding dress choice? I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Jason, 30M, in about 3 months. We've been together for 6 years, and I'm so excited about our wedding. It's going to be a small ceremony with close friends and family, but I want it to be meaningful and special. I've always been close with my best friend, Grace, 29F. We met in college, and over the years, she's been my confidant, partner in crime, and someone I've shared so many moments with. So when I started planning my wedding, it felt natural to ask her to be my maid of honor. Grace has always been so supportive, and I knew she'd be by my side through all the planning. She's been there for me during some of the most difficult moments of my life, and I couldn't imagine my big day without her. However, things started to take a turn when it came to my wedding dress. I had a very specific vision of what I wanted, a simple, elegant, vintage-inspired dress. I wasn't looking for anything overly flashy or dramatic. I wanted something timeless and classic. After trying on several dresses, I found one that I absolutely loved. It was a floor-length lace gown with delicate detailing and a subtle train. It was everything I envisioned, and I felt beautiful in it. When I showed Grace a picture of the dress, I was excited to hear her thoughts. But instead of the enthusiastic response I was expecting, Grace looked uneasy. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "I don't know, it's a little plain. Don't you think you should go for something more glamorous for your wedding?" I was taken aback. I thought the dress was beautiful and exactly what I wanted, but Grace continued to express that she thought it was too boring and underwhelming. She suggested that I should try something more extravagant, like a ball gown or something with more sparkle. I explained to her that I didn't want anything that would take the attention away from the meaning of the day, but she insisted that I should go all out because it was my special day. She even showed me a few dresses that were way outside of my budget and not remotely close to what I wanted. I took a deep breath and tried to explain my vision to her. I told her I wanted a dress that reflected my personality and wasn't trying to live up to any kind of expectation. But Grace kept pushing back, saying I was settling for something safe. The more I tried to explain why I loved the dress, the more she seemed disappointed, and I started to feel like she wasn't respecting my choice. After that conversation, things started to feel off. Grace's behavior changed. She started making subtle comments about my dress, questioning why I wasn't daring enough or doing something more memorable. At one point, she even told me, "I just feel like you're not embracing the full bridal experience." I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't help but feel hurt that she wasn't supportive of my decision. A few weeks later, we went to a bridal boutique to shop for bridesmaid dresses, and that's when everything blew up. Grace started picking out dresses that were completely different from what I had in mind for my bridesmaids. I wanted something simple and understated, but Grace was picking out dresses with a lot of sequins, bright colors, and high drama. When I politely told her that I preferred a more subtle look for the bridesmaids, she snapped at me and said, "Why do you want everything to be so boring? It's your wedding, but you're acting like you're afraid of making a statement." I was frustrated and told her that I wanted the wedding to reflect me, not some over-the-top fantasy. That's when Grace said something that really stung. "Well, if you want to make a statement, maybe you should have chosen a dress that actually says something." At that point, I was fed up. I had been trying to keep the peace and respect her opinion, but she was being disrespectful and dismissive of what I wanted. I felt like she was trying to push me into making choices that weren't true to myself. I told her that I appreciated her opinion, but I didn't need her to dictate my wedding, and I needed her to support me in the decisions I was making. Grace didn't take that well. She accused me of being too sensitive and taking everything personally. She said I was being selfish for not considering how she felt about the wedding, and that I was being ungrateful for all the help she'd given me during the planning. I tried to tell her that I valued her support, but that my wedding day was about me and Jason, and I needed her to understand that. A few days later, I received a text from Grace saying that she was hurt by my response and that she was reconsidering her role as my maid of honor. She said she didn't think she could be part of the wedding if I wasn't going to take her opinion seriously, and that she felt like I was shutting her out. She told me that if I wasn't going to listen to her, maybe it was better if she didn't have a role at all. I was shocked. I never expected her to react that way. I never thought that me choosing the wedding dress I loved would result in her wanting to back out of being my maid of honor. I tried calling her to talk things through, but she didn't pick up. After a couple of days of silence, I sent her a message saying that I understood if she needed space, but that I wanted her to be part of my day. I told her I needed her support, not criticism, and that I hoped she would reconsider. She didn't respond for a week, and then, when she did, it was a short text saying, "I'll think about it." But since then, she's been distant, barely replying to my messages and not offering any support for the wedding planning. It's like she's completely checked out. At this point, I'm heartbroken. Grace has been my best friend for so long, and I can't believe that something as simple as a wedding dress has caused this much tension between us. I've been trying to understand her side, but I also feel like I'm allowed to make the choices that feel right for me, even if they don't align with her expectations. So, AITA for refusing to change my wedding dress or let Grace dictate my choices, even though she's now threatening to back out of the wedding? Should I have been more compromising, or is she being unreasonable? AITA for calling out my friend for making fun of my business idea, even though it's successful now? Okay, so this is a long one, but I really need to get some outside perspective here. I, 27M, have a friend, Jake, 28M, who I've known since high school. We've always been close, and I consider him one of my best friends. Over the years, though, our lives have diverged quite a bit. Jake went the typical route. He graduated college, got a job in corporate marketing, and now works a steady 9 to 5 with a nice salary and benefits. I, on the other hand, took a different path. About 3 years ago, I left my office job and decided to start my own business. It wasn't some grand tech idea or anything fancy like that, just a small local business that I knew could help people. I've always been passionate about helping small companies and entrepreneurs grow their brands, so I started a business consulting service that helps small businesses build their presence online. When I started, it was tough. I had to scrape by, working odd jobs to pay bills while also trying to get my business off the ground. But after a lot of work, some lucky breaks, and tons of networking, I managed to build it up. Last year, I finally reached a point where I could comfortably support myself, hire a small team, and even expand the business. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm so proud of how far I've come. Now, here's where the issue comes in. For most of the time I've been building my business, Jake has been incredibly dismissive. He's always made jokes about how I'm chasing pipe dreams or burning money for no reason. He didn't really take it seriously. He kept telling me that I should go back to my 9 to 5 job because that's where real security is and that my business was never going to take off. I'd brush it off, but over the years, the jokes started to get under my skin. The worst part is that, for a while, it felt like he was genuinely mocking my ambition. I always tried to explain my vision to him, but it felt like he just didn't get it. Every time I'd hit a new milestone, he'd say something along the lines of, "That's cute, but how are you going to make a living doing that?" Or worse, when I'd share stories of my client's success, he'd roll his eyes and say, "I'm sure they're all just grateful you helped them with some minor tweaks." It was always like he was downplaying everything I worked for. Fast forward to a few months ago, my business has started taking off in a big way. I've started getting recognition in the industry, and the clients I've been working with have been referring me to other businesses, which has allowed me to expand even more. Last month, I hired a second consultant to work under me, and I'm in talks with a few larger companies to potentially collaborate. Naturally, I shared this with my friends, including Jake. I was excited, you know? It's been a long time coming. But when I told him about the growth and the new partnerships, he said, "Wow, that's amazing. But don't forget that I was right all along. I knew this would fail, but somehow you still made it work. It's like you've managed to win the lottery." He laughed, but it felt like the jab was right there, just beneath the surface. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I snapped and told him that he'd been a major jerk for years and that he'd never believed in me, even when I was struggling. I reminded him of all the times he'd mocked my business idea, told me it would fail, and downplayed all the work I put in. I told him that if he had been a true friend, he would have supported me instead of constantly throwing shade. Jake was taken aback. He didn't expect me to say anything like that, and for a moment, he just stared at me. Then he said something that really threw me off. "I was just trying to be honest with you. It's not like I wanted you to fail, but I didn't think it would work. I didn't think it was realistic. And now that it is, I'm happy for you, but you don't have to rub it in my face." I told him I wasn't rubbing anything in his face, but it felt like all these years of his doubt and mockery had finally come to a head. I said that he didn't understand how much those comments hurt, and that they made me feel like he wasn't really a supportive friend, especially when I needed it most. He apologized, but it was a little too late for me. I told him that if he wanted to keep being friends, he needed to show more respect for my career and the work I'd put in. Since then, we haven't really spoken. He reached out once or twice, but I wasn't ready to just forgive him and move on like nothing happened. The way he dismissed my business for years made me feel like he never really valued me or what I was doing. It wasn't just a friendly joke. It was years of undermining my dreams. I've talked to a couple of my other friends about the situation, and while they agree that Jake was a jerk about it, they say I might have overreacted. They think I could have just brushed it off like I had in the past instead of letting it all blow up. They say I should have just let it go now that my business is successful. But honestly, it feels like I'm finally standing up for myself after years of feeling belittled. So, AITA for calling out Jake after everything he said about my business? Should I have just let it go? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding, even though I know she's struggling financially? Okay. So I 30F need some perspective on this situation because I'm starting to feel like I might be the bad guy, but I'm also really conflicted. To give you some background, I have a younger sister, Megan, 27F, and we've had a pretty rocky relationship over the years. We grew up in a pretty tense household. Our parents had a lot of financial problems, and that caused a lot of stress in our family. Megan and I were often at odds, especially when it came to our parents' expectations. She and I have always had different ways of handling things. She tends to avoid conflict, while I've always been more direct. Fast forward to now, and Megan is getting married in a few months. She's been with her fiancé, Mark, 29M, for about 3 years. I'll admit, I didn't love him at first, but over time he's grown on me. He's a nice guy, and I've seen that he genuinely cares for her. However, their financial situation is a mess. Megan and Mark both work full-time jobs, but they've never had great money management skills, and now that they're planning a wedding, they're in over their heads. Megan came to me a few weeks ago, asking if I could help with some of the expenses. Specifically, she wants me to cover the cost of her bridal shower and a big chunk of her wedding dress. At first, I was sympathetic. I know that weddings can be expensive, and I could see that they were struggling. But here's the thing. I've always been very financially responsible. I've worked hard to save up and build a stable life for myself. I'm not rolling in money by any means, but I have enough to live comfortably. The thing that really bothered me, though, was that Megan never reached out for help in any other way. She never asked me for advice on budgeting or for any other form of support before this. It just felt like, now that she's in a pinch, she's expecting me to swoop in and save the day. I tried to explain this to her, telling her that I could offer emotional support, help with wedding planning, or even help brainstorm ways to cut down on costs, but that I wasn't in a position to just hand over thousands of dollars for the wedding. She got upset and said that I was being selfish and unsupportive. She reminded me that I'd always been the responsible one in the family, and that I should be willing to help my sister in her time of need. She also said that I was being petty because I had the money to help, but I was choosing not to. After our conversation, I felt guilty. I kept thinking about how hard it must be for her to try and plan a wedding on a tight budget, and how much pressure she must be feeling. But at the same time, I didn't think it was fair for her to just assume that I would cover such a large portion of her wedding expenses. It felt like a huge ask, especially when she hadn't taken any steps to handle the situation herself. She didn't try to adjust her expectations or make compromises. It was as if she thought I would just take care of everything because I had a little extra money saved up. A couple of days ago, she called me again and pushed even harder. She said that she was willing to downsize some of the other wedding expenses, but that the bridal shower and the wedding dress were non-negotiable. She said, "You're my sister, and this is one of the most important days of my life. I shouldn't have to beg you for help." She was really upset, and I could tell she was hurt by my reluctance. At that point, I started to feel even more torn. Part of me does want to help her because she's my sister, and I want her to have the wedding of her dreams. But I also feel like I've worked hard to get to where I am financially, and it's not my responsibility to rescue her when she and Mark have made poor financial decisions. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect her to figure out a way to make the wedding work within her means, just like I did when I had my own wedding a few years ago. My husband and I didn't have a lot of money, but we managed to put together a beautiful wedding by being creative and staying within a budget. To make matters worse, my mom has started getting involved. She called me and said I was being too harsh, that I should help my sister because it's her wedding, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. She even said that if I didn't help, I would be showing the family that I don't care about Megan and that it would create a rift between us. I felt incredibly frustrated because I feel like my mom is just reinforcing Megan's sense of entitlement instead of encouraging her to take responsibility for her own finances. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm feeling really stuck. I know I can afford to help her, but I don't want to enable her to continue making poor financial decisions. On top of that, I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with her, but at the same time, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I've always been the one who people turn to when they need help, and it's starting to feel like I'm the family's bank rather than a sister. I've talked to my husband about it, and he agrees with me that it's not my responsibility to pay for Megan's wedding. He thinks she needs to learn how to manage her money and that giving in would set a bad precedent. But I can't help but feel guilty, especially since my mom is really pressuring me. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding, even though I know she's struggling financially? Should I give in and help, or am I right to stand my ground? AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding after she excluded my partner from the guest list. I'm 29F in a bit of a complicated situation, and I need some outside perspective because I feel like I'm the bad guy, but I just can't shake the feeling that what my best friend, Sarah, 28F, did was wrong. To give some context, I've been best friends with Sarah since high school. We've been through a lot together: college, breakups, job struggles, and everything in between. We've always had each other's backs, and I considered her my closest friend. About 2 years ago, I met my partner, Lucas, 31M, and we've been together ever since. He's amazing, supportive, kind, and really gets me. I introduced him to Sarah when we first started dating, and she seemed to like him. There were no red flags or anything strange. In fact, Sarah often told me how great he was and how happy she was that I found someone like him. Fast forward to this year, when Sarah got engaged. I was so happy for her when she announced it. Of course, I immediately offered to help with anything she needed for the wedding. As her best friend, I wanted to be involved and help make her day as special as possible. However, when she started going through her guest list, something happened that really threw me off. Sarah asked me for a list of people I wanted to bring with me to the wedding. I immediately assumed that my partner, Lucas, would be invited, just like any other couple would expect. We've been together for over 2 years at this point, and I thought it would be a given that he would be included, especially since we had attended Sarah's other events together without any issues. So I mentioned to her that I would be bringing Lucas. She didn't respond immediately, but a few days later, she told me that Lucas wouldn't be invited to the wedding. She explained that the wedding was going to be a smaller, more intimate affair, and she was keeping the guest list limited to only her closest family and friends. I was a little surprised, but I thought maybe she had a good reason, so I didn't push it. However, the more I thought about it, the more upset I became. It wasn't that Lucas and Sarah weren't close. It was that Lucas and I have been a package deal for a while now, and it felt strange that she would invite my other friends' partners but not him. I tried to talk to her about it and asked if there was any way to make an exception. I explained that I felt uncomfortable attending her wedding without him because we've been living together for over a year, and he's a huge part of my life. I also pointed out that if the wedding was supposed to be an intimate gathering, he would be part of that inner circle for me. She brushed me off and said, "Look, I'm sorry, but I'm keeping it very small, and I don't want to add anyone else to the guest list. It's nothing personal, but I have to be strict with who I'm inviting." I tried to explain how it felt hurtful to be excluded from such a big event in her life without him, but she kept insisting it was her decision and that I should respect it. I felt really torn. On one hand, I wanted to be there for her, but on the other hand, I couldn't just accept not bringing my partner to a wedding where everyone else was bringing theirs. It felt incredibly disrespectful to me. At that point, I made the decision to not attend the wedding at all. I told Sarah that if Lucas couldn't be there, then I wouldn't feel right going either. She was really upset when I told her, saying that I was being dramatic and making it all about me. She said that I was putting her wedding at risk and that I was being selfish by letting one guest cause me to skip such an important day. She said that if I really cared about her, I would understand and respect her wishes, and that I was making this about my own feelings rather than her happiness. I've been feeling guilty about my decision ever since, but I honestly don't think I can attend a wedding where my partner is so blatantly excluded. It doesn't feel right to me, and I can't help but think that if the roles were reversed, she would be just as hurt if I excluded Lucas for no reason. I also feel like the fact that she's so adamant about not inviting him and is being dismissive of my feelings speaks volumes about where our friendship stands now. I've been there for her through thick and thin, and it just feels like she's not extending the same courtesy to me. I've been second-guessing my decision, though. I know weddings are stressful, and maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But at the same time, it feels like I'm being expected to choose between my best friend and my partner, and I don't think that's fair. I've tried to talk to other people about it, and some of them agree with me, while others say I'm overreacting and should just suck it up for the sake of the friendship. So, AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because she excluded my partner from the guest list? Should I have just accepted her decision and gone without him? Or was I right to stand my ground? AITA for canceling my wedding after my sister tried to ruin it with her drama? So I, 27F, need to get this off my chest and ask if I'm overreacting because I've been feeling like the bad guy in this situation, but I also just can't help but feel so hurt and betrayed by what my sister 30F did. I'll try to keep this as clear and detailed as possible, but it's a lot, so please bear with me. To give you some background, I've been planning my wedding for over a year. My fiancé, Tom, 29M, and I have been together for 3 years and engaged for almost 2. We've been through a lot together, including me supporting him through a tough job loss, and he's always had my back through everything. Our wedding has been something I've dreamed about for as long as I can remember. I wanted it to be perfect and reflect both of our personalities, while still respecting our family's traditions. I've worked hard to budget and plan, keeping everything in mind from the venue, the food, the guest list, to the little details like my dress and the decor. Now, my sister Rachel is someone I've always been close to growing up. We've had our disagreements in the past, but I thought we were in a good place. Rachel's always been a bit of a drama queen, though, and tends to make everything about her. She's the kind of person who will show up to an event wearing something intentionally over the top to make a statement, and then act shocked when people notice. She's also very used to being the center of attention. It's not that she's a bad person, but she has a tendency to make everything about herself without even realizing it, and it's caused some tension between us over the years. So, the wedding planning started to hit a bump when Rachel asked to be my maid of honor. I had already decided I wanted one of my childhood friends, Leah, to be my maid of honor. Rachel has always had a way of making everything her own, so I knew if I made her my maid of honor, she'd probably take over everything, and I didn't want that. But I didn't want to upset her either, so I explained to her that I already had Leah picked out, and I asked her to be one of my bridesmaids instead. Rachel wasn't happy with that, but she agreed. At least, I thought she agreed. The problem started when Rachel began making demands about the wedding itself. It wasn't just about the dress or the flowers. She started pushing for major changes, like wanting to bring her boyfriend of 2 months as her date, even though I'd told her I had a limited guest list, and then insisting on making changes to the seating arrangements. She told me my bridesmaids' dresses were ugly and that I needed to pick something more flattering for her, even though I had already chosen something that everyone had already approved. Things escalated when Rachel told me she wasn't happy with the venue and that it was too small for a proper celebration. She said I needed to book a larger one, and even suggested a few better places, but they were well out of my budget. She didn't seem to care about the cost. She just wanted a bigger, more extravagant wedding. I politely but firmly told her that the venue was already booked, and we weren't going to change it, but she continued to bring it up, making snide remarks whenever we talked about the wedding. I let it slide, telling myself she was just being a bit difficult and would come around. However, the real breaking point came when Rachel started spreading rumors about my wedding to our extended family. I have a large family, and I've been very open about wanting a small, intimate wedding with just close friends and family. I was clear with everyone about the guest list, and we weren't inviting any distant relatives. I didn't want a huge, sprawling wedding. I wanted to keep it small and personal. But Rachel began telling people that I was snubbing family members and not including people who really care about me. She even went so far as to tell some of our cousins that I was being selfish and that I was cutting people out for no reason. She told them that Tom and I didn't care about family and that we were being elitist because we weren't inviting everyone. These lies started to spread, and I was getting calls from relatives asking why they weren't invited. It felt like she was trying to turn my own family against me. I confronted Rachel about this, asking her why she was spreading these rumors. She got defensive and said, "I was just telling people the truth. You're being unfair to the family, and it's ridiculous that you're excluding people who love you." I told her that I had been clear about my reasons for the guest list, and that it was my wedding, and if she didn't like it, she didn't have to come. At that point, Rachel started crying and said I was being too harsh and not understanding how much she was hurting. But I was done. I felt like she was manipulating me, using guilt to try and force me into doing things her way. This went on for another week, and by then I had enough. I did several more conversations with Rachel, and every time, she made it clear that she wasn't happy with the wedding, with the guest list, with the venue, or with any of the details. The constant stress she was causing, the rumors, the attempts to undermine my choices, it was too much. I was so overwhelmed by the constant negativity and drama that I started to question if I even wanted her to be in my life anymore. So I made the decision to cancel the wedding. I know that sounds extreme, but I just couldn't bring myself to go through with it knowing that Rachel would continue to try to overshadow the whole event and cause drama. Tom and I talked about it, and we both agreed that it wasn't worth it to go ahead with a wedding that was turning into such a nightmare. So, we told our families we were canceling the wedding. It was heartbreaking, but I honestly couldn't go forward knowing that my sister would continue to undermine the entire thing. Now, my family is furious. They are all accusing me of being a bridezilla and ruining everything because of my sister's behavior. They say I should have just sucked it up and let Rachel do her thing because she's family, and I should be more understanding. My mom is especially upset, saying that I've ruined my relationship with Rachel by not letting her be a part of the wedding the way she wanted. She told me that I should have just let Rachel have her way, so she wouldn't have caused a scene. But at this point, I'm just done with the drama. I've been second-guessing myself a lot lately. Maybe I should have just gone ahead with the wedding and ignored Rachel. But it feels like I was being emotionally blackmailed into a situation I didn't want. I'm just not sure if I made the right call. So, AITA for canceling my wedding because my sister tried to ruin it with her drama? Should I have sucked it up and gone ahead with it, or was I right to cancel the whole thing? AITA for refusing to help my brother after he lost his job and now demands money from me? I, 31F, am in a bit of a situation with my brother, Jake, 28M, and I'm feeling really torn about it. I know I'm not a bad person, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm being too harsh, so I need some perspective. So a little background. I've always been the responsible one in my family. I've had a steady job since I graduated college, and I've worked really hard to build a stable life for myself. I've been careful with my finances, and I have savings, but I don't live extravagantly. I'm just an ordinary person trying to be responsible. My brother, Jake, on the other hand, has always been the free spirit of the family. He's not lazy by any means, but he's never really had a stable career path. He bounces from one job to another, often switching industries or going from contract job to contract job. He's never been good at budgeting, and as a result, he's always in and out of financial trouble. A few months ago, Jake lost his most recent job in a completely unexpected way. He was working for a small company, doing something in the tech field, and his role was eliminated in a round of layoffs. This wasn't entirely his fault, and I know that, but Jake has this habit of acting like the world is always out to get him when things go wrong. He told me that he was devastated, but that he'd figure it out and find something else soon. He also told me that he was going to take some time off to figure out what he really wants to do with his life because, according to him, the job market was terrible and he didn't want to just settle for anything. I told him that it was fine to take a break, but that he also needed to be responsible about looking for something new and keeping his finances in check. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear much from him, but then I started getting random calls asking for advice or asking to borrow small amounts of money. I didn't think much of it at first. I gave him a bit of money to help him out since I knew he wasn't working, but I told him that he needed to start looking harder for a job and that this couldn't go on forever. He promised he would. A month later, I get another call from Jake. This time, the conversation was different. He told me that he was struggling to pay rent, that he didn't have enough money for food, and that he'd exhausted his savings. He asked me if I could send him $1,000 to cover his bills. I was taken aback by this. $1,000 is a lot of money. And while I knew he wasn't working, I also knew that he wasn't really making much of an effort to get another job. He had been turning down interviews because he didn't like the companies or didn't want to work in that field. It felt like he wasn't putting in any real effort. I told Jake that I didn't have that kind of money to just give him. I explained that I had my own bills to pay and that it wasn't sustainable for me to just keep handing him money. I asked him what he was doing to look for work, and he got defensive, saying that I didn't understand what he was going through and that he needed my help, not my judgment. I told him I would be happy to help him find resources like job listings or career counseling, but that I couldn't just give him money. I suggested that he reach out to a few of his friends for help or try applying to temp agencies in the meantime. Jake didn't take it well. He accused me of being selfish and unsupportive and said I didn't care about him or his well-being. He said that if I really cared, I would help him out without making him feel bad about it. I was really hurt by his response because I had always been there for him in the past. I had helped him with smaller amounts of money before, even though I had always tried to make him realize that he couldn't rely on me indefinitely. But this felt different. It felt like Jake was expecting me to just fix his problems for him, and I couldn't do that. A few days after that conversation, Jake called again. This time, he told me he had thought about it and realized that he just couldn't get by without help. He said he didn't have any other options and needed money to pay for rent and food for the next couple of months until he got back on his feet. This time, he asked me for $2,500, claiming that was the amount he needed to cover everything for the next few months. I told him no again. I told him that if he couldn't afford rent, he might need to consider moving to a cheaper place or find a roommate, but that I wasn't going to just give him thousands of dollars. I explained again that I wasn't in a position to just throw that kind of money at him, especially when I didn't think he was taking responsibility for his own situation. At this point, I felt like I was being taken advantage of, and I was done enabling him. Jake didn't take that well either. He called me a bad sister and said that I had forgotten where I came from. He said that I was too busy living my life and enjoying my success while ignoring the fact that he was struggling. He accused me of being privileged and said that if our parents were still around, they would have helped him, which is true to an extent. But that's not the point. It felt like he was guilt-tripping me into giving him money, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I haven't heard from him much since then. Our parents, who are still alive but live in a different state, have also gotten involved. They called me and said I needed to help Jake because he was in real trouble, and that I was being cold-hearted by not giving him the money. I tried to explain my side of things, but they just told me that I was being too tough on him. My dad even said that I was lucky to be in a good place, but that Jake needed my help, and that as a family, I should be there for him. Honestly, I'm feeling really stuck. I love my brother, but I don't think I should have to pay for his lack of planning and his constant avoidance of responsibility. I've helped him out before, but now it feels like he's expecting me to be his personal bank. I've worked really hard to get to where I am, and I don't think I should just be handing out money to someone who isn't even trying to help themselves. So, AITA for refusing to help my brother financially after he lost his job? Should I just give him the money to avoid conflict, or is it okay to set this boundary? AITA for cutting off my best friend after she stole from me and tried to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting? This is a bit of a complicated situation, and I've been going back and forth in my head about it, so I'm hoping I can get some clarity on whether I'm in the wrong or if I'm justified in my actions. I, 29F, have been best friends with Megan, 30F, for about 10 years. We met in college and clicked right away. Over the years, we've been through a lot together. We've supported each other through breakups, job losses, family issues, and everything in between. I would have considered her one of the closest people in my life, like a sister, really. She was always there for me, and I thought I was there for her as well. But this whole thing has really shaken me and made me question our entire friendship. A few months ago, I moved into a new apartment. I was really excited about the new place. It was bigger than my last one and had more space, so I was really trying to make it feel like home. Megan, who had been going through some personal and financial struggles, she had just lost her job and was dealing with some family drama, asked me if she could crash at my place for a few weeks while she sorted things out. I was more than happy to help her, as she had done the same for me a few years ago when I was in a rough spot. I told her that she could stay with me for as long as she needed, and that it wasn't a problem at all. Everything seemed fine for the first couple of weeks. Megan was great about cleaning up after herself, and we spent time catching up, watching movies, and having long talks like we always had. But then about 3 weeks into her stay, I noticed some of my things were going missing. Small things at first, little pieces of jewelry, a few of my books, some makeup, and personal items. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but then it started to happen more frequently. One day, I went into my closet and realized that some of my more expensive clothes were missing too. I started keeping track of everything, and I noticed that things were disappearing almost daily. I tried to brush it off at first, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, I realized I had a camera in my living room for security reasons, and I decided to check the footage. When I looked through the recordings, I was absolutely shocked to see Megan going through my things. She was in my room, looking through my drawers and taking things. The footage showed her walking out of my room with one of my designer handbags, which had been missing for days. I was livid. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I immediately confronted Megan about it. I told her that I knew she had been taking my things without asking, and I showed her the video footage. She was initially shocked, and then she got defensive, She started denying it and saying I was misunderstanding the situation, claiming that I must have just misplaced the items. She told me I was being paranoid and that I was blowing things out of proportion. At that moment, I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. I couldn't believe she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the one in the wrong. I didn't back down. I told her I had proof, and she could either admit what she had done or leave. She finally admitted to it, but she was trying to justify her actions. She said she didn't have money to buy the things she wanted, and she felt like I wouldn't miss them. She claimed that she was going through a hard time and that she didn't mean to hurt me. She even said that she thought I would understand because we were best friends, and it's not like I would notice a few things missing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her that what she did was theft, and no matter what she was going through, that didn't make it okay. She apologized, but it felt empty. I didn't believe her apology, and I couldn't just let it go. At this point, I felt like my trust had been completely shattered. She had crossed a huge line, and I didn't know how to move forward from that. I told her I needed space to think about things, and that I didn't want her staying with me any longer. I told her to leave, and she argued, saying that I was being ridiculous and too dramatic. She asked me how I could kick her out when she was in such a vulnerable position. I told her that she wasn't my guest anymore, and that I couldn't let someone who had stolen from me live in my home. After a lot of arguing, she eventually left, but the whole situation left me feeling emotionally exhausted. For the next couple of weeks, Megan tried reaching out to me multiple times. She apologized over text, saying she was so sorry and that she didn't know what had gotten into her. She said she had been feeling depressed and overwhelmed, and she was just trying to cope. She promised it would never happen again, and that she wanted to rebuild our friendship. But I wasn't sure I could ever trust her again. I didn't respond to most of her messages, but I did eventually send her one, saying that while I appreciated her apology, I couldn't just forgive her and go back to being friends like nothing happened. I told her I needed time and that I couldn't just pretend things were fine. Megan didn't take this well. She accused me of being cold-hearted and unforgiving. She said that I was overreacting and that if our roles were reversed, I would expect her to forgive me. She said she had been there for me in the past, and I should be more understanding of what she was going through. She even brought up the fact that I had helped her financially before and said I was selfish for not helping her when she needed it the most. I've been feeling so conflicted. I don't want to be a bad friend, but I can't just ignore what she did. It wasn't a small mistake. It was a betrayal of trust. I've always been there for Megan, and I've helped her out in countless ways. But this felt different. It felt like she didn't respect me or my boundaries, and I couldn't just let her walk all over me. On the other hand, I understand that she's going through a tough time, but I don't think that gives her the right to steal from me. So, AITA for cutting off my best friend after she stole from me and tried to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting? Should I have been more understanding of her struggles? Or was I justified in ending the friendship